Hey guys, Comfort MC here again for LBP2-Torials. Ha, the name does make sense. Okay, today we are going to be talking about sackbots, these stupid guys here. Now, if you don't believe me that they're stupid, try making them follow you around hazards. They will invariably jump in and die. And it's frustrating, but they do have some nice uses when you want to mask what the player is doing behind a sackbot. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our sackbot by using a tag, and we're going to use a controlinator, or as I might call it by accident, a direct control seat, as they were used to be called. Okay, now we're going to use this tag as a way to reference the sackbot, and we're going to use the controlinator as a way to control and move the sackbot around. So I just gave him a little outfit there to make it so he's not the boring default sackbot. So first we're going to give our tag here a name, and I'm going to call him sackbot, which is fitting. Remember that you can label tags, which is nice because then you get way more than 8 options. And I'm going to set my controlinator to be receiver. So it's going to receive controlinator signals, and by default it's going to set up and follow, or it's going to override that sackbot's controls. So now I need something to provide the signal for my sackbot to move and control. So we're going to put a piece of hologram material, and we're going to make this invisible, and you'll see how this is going to work in a minute. So let's place another direct control seat on the hologram here, and we're going to turn this one to transmitter. So now this one is going to be transmitting that green signal. And so that signal is going to transmit to the sackbot and control him, so you can do that without the player actually being right next to him. So let's see, we'll set this to automatically enter, radius of 15, and I don't want to see it in play mode, so I'd set it to visible in play mode, no. So I drop in, and now you see that I can control my sackbot just like I could sackboy, but you'll notice that it's possible for him to run off screen, which we don't want. Now there are a lot of solutions where you can use movie cameras, but those turn out to be sloppy, and instead what we can do is set up this so our hologram follows around our sackbot. It's a much more elegant solution, and you'll see that it's nice for respawns when we do that in a minute. So we'll set this to green, sackbot, so it matches. And we'll set our minimum detection radius down to 0, so it follows right on the sackbot, and we'll go ahead and leave that at 50. Acceleration to 100 and speed to 100, so the follower is always going to be right on that sackbot. Just like so. So now if I drop in, and then I go to preview mode, you'll see that I can move this sackbot around just like I could with the sackboy, and the illusion is complete that you are that player. Now notice that he was using the robot animation style, and I don't have to do that. I could set the animation style to sackboy, and now when I play it, it will behave like sackboy. So now the illusion is complete. He will behave exactly like sackboy. But there are a few other interesting things that we can do. But first I'm going to put a gyroscope on here. It isn't necessary, but I do like it in the event that it starts spinning around, and because we're going to put emitters on it later, I want to make sure that it's always upright. So what we can do, in addition to what we did there before, we can also intercept some signals and do some interesting things with our sackbot. I'll just do a simple example here, where I'm going to make it so the right stick always controls his arms. So I'm going to use an OR gate on the right stick here, so either up, down, or left or right, and then wire that into R2. If you're familiar with how a Little Big Planet works, when you hold R2, it allows you to move your right arm around. Here I'm not holding R2, I am just moving the right stick around. And because either up or down on the stick will trigger R2, we have that working like so. We can also do some interesting things where I can make the right stick control his head. That middle input there is the 6-axis control, the motion controller, but I have wired it into my right stick. So now when I move my right stick, he moves his head around. But you'll notice when you do this, if you hit up, he looks down, and if you hit down, he looks up. Now this is kind of frustrating because it's backwards, but we can actually flip our signal there. And the way we do that is we're going to use a direction splitter, and we're going to use a direction combiner. So notice that one of them takes a signal and spits out a positive or negative, and then the other one takes a positive or negative and turns it into a single signal. So we're going to wire positive to negative and negative to positive, which ultimately switches our signal here, and then we're going to wire that to our 6-axis override there. So when we get in, now we can move our right stick around. He'll look left and right, he'll look up and down, just like we would like. So this could be interesting if you had a game mechanic where Sackboy wants to look around. Okay, so we can also do some other interesting things where we intercept signals. We can actually disable certain signals. So the way we do that is we just make another copy of our controlinator. Now this one is set to receive our signal from our hologram follower there, and we're going to make it so it doesn't override Sackbot, and the other one still does, but we change the frequency color to pink. So now this one is pink, and there's no transmitter that's matching to pink. So the only way that one could get a signal is if we wire directly to it. And we're going to do that. We're going to do that here. Let's see. We're going to wire straight from here over to there. And we're going to do our up, down, left to right on our left stick. And if we wanted, we could do our right stick, left, right, and right stick, up, down. So now the control systems that I have set up right now, I have only wired to left, right, and the left stick and the right stick. And I can't do anything else. Right now I'm trying to jump and it's not working. So if we wanted to include the jump, then all we have to do is wire from jump to jump. And so if I drop in, now I can jump. Now using this method we can do some other interesting things where you remap the controls. So you don't need it to have jump as X by default. So say for example I wanted to make L1 jump. I take my L1 and I wire it to jump. So now if I drop in and unpause, L1 is now the jump button and X will do nothing. Now you may be asking yourself, why would we do that? Well, the reason that we use two controllinators on the Sackbot is because you'll notice we are now wireless to our transmitter there, which is what we desire. So we're going to go ahead and reset this back to our original override Sackbot, green color there. So just controlling the Sackbot as normal. But we're going to talk about how to make Sackbots respawn in the event that they die, because they invariably will. So we're going to set up a piece of hologram here, and we're going to use this as a checkpoint. So I'm going to put a microchip on there. And let me move that to the center. And then we're going to put some logic on here which will handle our respawn. So we're going to put a player sensor here which will trigger our checkpoint, so it will work just like a normal checkpoint. And then we're going to use a 2-port selector to handle our on or off checkpoint state. So I'll wire my player sensor to my second state because by default the first state is on. So I'll wire it to the second one, and then we're going to use a tag which will indicate our checkpoint, and we're going to use followers on this to make our follower move to the checkpoint. So we're going to give this a name. I'm going to call it checkpoint. I like giving these names so I don't ever mix up greens, reds, blues, or whatever for whatever I might use them throughout the level. So I'm just going to put that as our green checkpoint. So you'll notice that when I drop in front of this checkpoint here, it's going to turn that tag on. And even when I move away from it, it stays on, just like a checkpoint would behave. So I can wire this to the light for a visual indicator. So now I can drop in, that light will turn on, and it will stay on, and the checkpoint will stay on, as long as I don't hit another one. But let's say I had another one. How would I disable this one? Well, we can do this wirelessly, or what's sometimes called modularly, so we can make our checkpoints just copyable so we don't have to worry about wiring between them. I'm going to set up a red tag there, and I'm going to set up a tag sensor which will match it. So we'll set this and we'll make red, and we'll also label it checkpoint, and we'll wire that up to our resetting our selector state back to default. Now I want to make sure that I make this checkpoint radius fairly large. Notice that it's not going to interact with that tag that's on the same checkpoint there, or on the same circuit board, because as we talked about before, tags and tag sensors do not interact when they're on the same circuit board. Okay, so let's see what we have here. So I drop in, and I move to this one, and notice that it turns on that red tag and the green tag. The green tag will stay on even when I move away, but the red one will stay off. And I accidentally labeled this incorrectly, so let's see if I can't. Oh, no, I did label it correctly. So notice that when I move to the other one, the red tag turns on, which will turn off the other checkpoint. And it'll work back and forth like so. Now the nice thing about doing it like this is that making an extra checkpoint is as simple as just copying like that. So now I have 3 checkpoints, and they will all communicate wirelessly and make sure that only one is on at a time. No wires between them, which is very handy. And I can do them in any order. So let me delete those, and I will use just 2 checkpoints for a demonstration. But we want to make it so our checkpoints actually function as a checkpoint. So I'm going to look at my follower here and add some stuff to it. And I'm going to move my sackboy out of the way, because we're going to be emitting him, which will be like simulating a respawn. So we'll set him there, we'll trap him in this little room, and then we'll look at our follower here. So notice that right now our follower is just set to follow our sackboy and stay upright. That's the only thing we have so far. And I'm going to make it so, just check the settings, okay, that's fine. And we're going to use a tag sensor, which will pick up whether or not there is a sackbot present. So we're going to make this up to 30 and set our tag to sackbot. So there, it will only be on when our sackbot is there. So it will only follow when our sackbot is there. So let's set up a NOT gate. So we'll make it so when there is not a sackbot there, so we'll invert that signal, we're going to follow our checkpoint. I'm going to set this to, instead of sackbot, we're going to set it to checkpoint, and we're going to make the radius bigger because our checkpoints are not always right next to where we are. You can make that as large as you would like, and you can go up to 5,000. And then we'll wire our NOT gate to our follower there. So look at what happens. When there's not a sackbot there, our follower will move instantly to the checkpoint. Just like we would like. But we want to make it so when the follower gets there, it will emit a new sackbot. Because, well, that's the function of a checkpoint. So we're going to use another tag sensor, and we're going to set this one to now checkpoint. So when it gets to the checkpoint and when it gets nice and close, say 5 as our radius, and we want to set up our emitter here, and we want this emitter to only turn on once the sackbot or the sackbot follower is at the checkpoint and we don't have a sackbot there, else it will just start emitting over and over. So we use an AND gate there, and then we have to set up our emitter. So we use our live emitter. So I just, by trapping the sackbot over there, I can capture him and use him as the emit. And if you're trying to line this up, you can go to front view and turn off the grid to get it nice and centered there. Okay, and then we also want to turn ignore parent velocity on. Yes, that'll make it so if our follower is moving quickly and it emits, our sackbot just doesn't go flying off. Frequency will make it fairly rapid, and we want the sackbot to be alive forever as long as it doesn't die. And then everything else is pretty straightforward. So now let's watch what happens. The checkpoint moves there, and when it got there, it emitted a new sackbot, just like we would like. So now I can drop in and move, and I can trigger these checkpoints. But let's actually give a hazard so we can make sure our checkpoints are working. So I put a little piece of hologram material, and then I will lethalize it with fire, and then I kill my sackbot. And it will spawn out of the checkpoint. Jump over here, hit the other checkpoint, kill him, and he will spawn out of our new checkpoint. Now if you want to see what's going on here, we can go out of preview. So you kill him, and the follower will move and emit a new sackbot. So it's pretty handy.